Hello, lovely souls. Welcome to the Awakening to Your Soul Self podcast. I'm Christina Larero, a certified angel messenger and angel Reiki master teacher. My spiritual journey began in the spring of 2022 when my spirit team nudged me to listen to the amazing Angels and Awakening podcast by Julie Jancis. Since then, I've been learning to use my spiritual gifts and growing increasingly curious about spirituality and the various healing modalities. I'm so excited for you to join me on this special journey as we dive into spirituality and healing while exchanging our wisdom and profound insights with other remarkable healers. So grab a cup of coffee or tea, get cozy, and let's embark on the spiritual journey together. Hey there, it's Christina the Angel Messenger here. I just wanted to remind you to stay connected with me for all the latest updates and angel messages. Follow me on Instagram and Facebook at Christina Angel Messenger. Remember, that's Christina. If you're interested in an angel Reiki session, you can book one virtually or in person through my website at www.christinaangelmessenger.com. Remember, that's Christina angelmessenger.com. Stay tuned for more uplifting, insightful content on this podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Welcome back to the Awakening to Your Soul Self podcast. I have an amazing person here. I can't wait to have this conversation. I have Annie Bourke. She is an animal medium, and she's written 3 books so far. Welcome, Annie.
Thank you very much for having me on the show.
Perfect. So I always like to start with, who are you and what do you do?
Okay. I call myself the animal-human relationship enricher, and I connect pet parents with their animals through telepathic communication. So I can either have a conversation with an animal on the parent's behalf and ask the questions that they want answers to, which will give them peace of mind and clarity, or I can mentor animal parents and animal professionals to master telepathic communication so that they can talk with their own animals, living and in spirit.
Oh, that's amazing. I've always wondered about how intelligent animals really are, and what your work does really proves how intelligent they are.
Absolutely. And many of your listeners may not be aware, but animals actually understand everything that we say. They know a lot more than know and walk. And they have surprisingly extensive vocabularies. So when I'm doing the mentorship program, I work with animal parents one-on-one with 2 animals, and we practice sending messages backwards and forwards. And the words that they send back, like sometimes we've got no idea that they actually know the words. And sometimes they even know words that we're not familiar with. And when I look them up in the dictionary, they're there. So what I've discovered through my conversations is that some of our animals have very evolved souls in them. So they may have had multiple lifetimes in the past, either with us or even before us. And they may have been humans or they may have been animals. And being humans, they will be familiar with the language that was being used when they live. And so some of these animals have lived hundreds of years ago, and they know the words that were being used in common language then.
That's just mind-blowing.
It is.
Oh my goodness. That's really crazy because they don't speak back to you in like human form, so you don't think that they understand what you're saying.
They really do. And until we can communicate telepathically with them, which is how they talk with each other, so it's a silent language, we can't hear it or understand it till we can tune into them and learn how to do it. So till we can understand them telepathically, they have to use their eye language or body language or different vocalizations or even changes in behavior to get our attention. And we know that they're trying to communicate something with us. But when you can have a profound 2-way conversation with them and hear all sorts of things that our animals know about us and things that they want to help us with, it really is mind-blowing. They can really help expand our consciousness on an energetic, spiritual journey level. They can tell us about past lives that they've had with us. They understand what our soul purpose is and our lessons, and sometimes they're here to help us with those. So once we can have that conversation, it just totally changes your understanding of reality, because most people just treat their animal as a pet, and they don't understand that it is a soul who's in there that may have had human or animal lifetimes before. They are highly intelligent and highly intuitive. They're very tuned into us, so they can tell when we start to get unwell, and they can tell what our mood is. And they're so smart that if they know that we're sad or anxious or worried about something, they can go and do something deliberately goofy to make us laugh, because they know if we laugh, that's going to change the mood and we'll feel better. And they want to look after us, because to them, we're their world. And so they are totally interested in what we're doing. They love us having a verbal conversation with them, telling us what we're doing, because they want to know. And I've had one of my girl cats say to me, I just want to be involved. Like, they're just so fascinated. You know, why do we go out all day and work somewhere and come back grumpy when we could stay at home with them and play and have fun? And of course, they'd love
So
spending
true.
more time with us as well. So for people who work at home, it's, you know, a different dynamic with the relationship, because you can spend so much more time with them and learn to look at their patterns of behavior and pick up what's different about them.
That's amazing. So I always ask my guests if they can give a brief version of their spiritual awakening.
Okay. I think that I was born with the gift of claircognizance.
Mm.
You know things with no rational explanation as to why you know things. And I used to drive my family mad, because I would always know something and I didn't know why. I didn't know how, and they didn't know how either. And it was just a running joke that I was always right, but I didn't know why I was always right.
Mm.
But it's just kind of an inner knowing, and the answer would just come into my head. So I think I've had that from early childhood. When I was 4, I met kangaroos for the first time, and I've got photos of me doing that and feeding them, and no fear connecting with them. And I'd been interested in birds before that. So apparently I escaped out of a holiday accommodation unit I was staying in when I was 18 months old to go and talk to
Oh,
the birds. And no one knew that I'd left the unit. So it was obviously a very strong pull, and I've just had this fascination with animals. As I've gone along my spiritual journey, my clairvoyant gift switched on, and I had no idea what was happening, why I'd be having a conversation with someone like you and suddenly see visions of your past and see visions of your future. And I'm thinking, what is this? And what am I
mm.
supposed to do with it? I hadn't heard anything about spiritual awakenings. I didn't know they could happen. And so I had no point of reference to understand what was happening. So I spoke to a few people about it, and they said, oh, no, don't dabble in that. So I listened to them and I stopped for a number of years. And then a very intuitive friend found a course being advertised for spiritual development. And she said, oh, I thought you might be interested in this. So I went along, my clairvoyance switched back on, healing switched on. And as
Mm.
I've progressed on my journey now, more and more gifts have either switched on or amplified the more that I've committed to my life path and my purpose. So it's been a long journey of development. And once I understood what was happening with the clairvoyance, I was then set on a mission to find out more about the metaphysical world and to understand more. And I think that's one of the key things I understand now, is that we only know a snippet of reality. And once we wake up, then things start to make more sense. And particularly for me now, talking with animals, which I've done for over 12 years, it has totally changed my understanding of reality, because they've taught me so much, particularly about soul journeys, what
Mm.
happens when you pass away. and also about soul reincarnation, which I knew nothing about until they taught me. So it's being having an open mind and
Yeah.
understanding that everything that you thought you knew and understood is not in fact what you thought. And it's
Yeah.
having an open mind and an open heart to see with new eyes and experience things that words just can't describe. And things happen that there's no rational explanation for. And so it's learning to accept that really weird things can happen. And it actually
Mm.
is quite normal. And it's things that are hidden for some time until we do wake up. And I'm continuing to learn, like the animals taught me so many concepts when I was writing my most recent book, and some of that they haven't taught me before. So it's an ongoing journey of discovery, but that's all part of our spiritual evolvement and spiritual development once we wake up.
Wow. So you kind of always had this inkling with animals as such as young as 18 months. Like, I almost wonder, I know, like, my spirit team has showed me, like, before we hit 5, we're still connecting with the other side and heaven and things like that. So I wonder if you just knew, like, that was what you were supposed to do, was just talk to animals like it was just a normal thing.
It's interesting because for as long as I can remember, I thought that my animals could understand me. And in fact, I used to say, I wish I could speak cat because I was so sure they were understanding what I was saying. And I really wanted to know what they were saying back again. So, yes, it's probably an inner knowing that I could. But from what I've understood till now, children can talk telepathically to animals when they're little, and they've got the ability to do that, and they can tell you what the animals told them and what they're thinking. But then something happens and we grow out of it, we switch off that ability, but it's something that we can reactivate again. So I didn't know it was my sole purpose to do animal communication
Mm.
until one of my cats sadly passed away after a short illness. And it made me feel as though I'd missed the opportunity to get to know her on a deeper level because I hadn't learned how to communicate. So she's the one who inspired me to learn animal communication. And when I started looking for courses, I found one online, and there was an image of the cat on the homepage of the website that looked exactly like her, facial markings and all. And I thought, wow, there's a big sign from the universe that this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And I've spoken to her since in spirit, and she's told me that was her purpose. Her life purpose was to guide me to doing this work because she knew it was my life
Mm.
purpose. And they know what we're here to do. And a lot of them
Absolutely.
come to us to help us. So, and I've spoken to her numerous times since. She's appeared in dreams and meditation, so I can see her
Mhm.
running and, vocalizing and chatting away, which is really comforting. But that was her purpose, to just get me there. And it's interesting, I haven't studied astrology. I don't know if you have,
Not
but
yet, no.
well, I had a session with a lady who also does astrology readings for animals. And
Oh.
so there is a part in your birth chart that talks about animals, but there's also another part that indicates your life purpose and your soul lessons. My life purpose is to talk with animals, and particularly animals in spirit, and that's in my birth chart. And I just think it's incredible. It's literally
Mm.
written in the stars. So that particular day I was born, and I was actually born overdue. So if I'd actually been born on my birth date, I would have had a completely different chart. But
Yeah,
everything's meant to be. And I was born on that particular date. And that's what's in my chart.
that's
So I
amazing.
know I'm following my true purpose. My cat's confirmed it, and it's written
Mm.
in the chart as well. And I just know, like, it fills me with joy being able to connect with animals and help them and help their parents. And everyone says, when you're doing your life purpose, it is something you feel as though you're swimming in this river of bliss and it doesn't feel like work, because it is so fulfilling, and your heart and your soul love it because it's what you're meant to do. So you're really honoring your true purpose.
That's amazing. So you already started to dabble a little bit in what animal medium and what an animal communicator is. I'm curious, what was the first animal that you communicated with? Was it one of your cats?
No, I was actually at a conference covering all sorts of different spiritual topics. And this was before I'd done animal communication. And we were asked to connect with an animal belonging to the person that we were partnered with. And
Mm.
so the first animal I actually spoke with was a dog in spirit. And he showed me a little material ball that was in all sorts of different segments of material, like pieces of an
Mm.
orange all stitched together. And I described it to his mum, and she said that's his favourite toy. So he showed me that. So that was just beautiful
Wow.
confirmation. And then he started telling me chocolate. And he just kept going on and on saying chocolate. And I thought, I can't be hearing that right because dogs aren't allowed to
Yeah.
eat chocolate. It's not safe for them. And he just went on and on and on. And in the end, I had to say to Mum, look, I'm sorry, I don't know why he's doing it, but he keeps saying chocolate. She just started laughing. When she had him, she didn't realize that chocolate wasn't good for him. And it was one of their favorite special things to do together was to share a block of chocolate.
Mm.
So again, that was confirmation that I was really talking with her dog. So I think that gave her a lot of peace knowing that he'd come through and described that material ball with the different segments and told me the message about the chocolate. So that just started off my journey, but it was only, doing the telepathic communication course that I really started working more diligently at it. And I had two cats living with me at the time. So they became my very patient teachers because I didn't really know, what I was doing. And like
Yeah.
I do a process where I tune into the animal's frequency. I ask their permission to have a conversation because it's a free will choice for them. I can't
Yeah.
force them to talk and I can't force them to answer questions. So I tune into one animal and have a conversation and then thank them and then disconnect and then tune into the second animal and have a conversation and disconnect. Months after this, they finally let me in on their secret that they could both hear what I was talking about, but they just hadn't told me. So I could have just tuned into both of them at the same time and had a conversation with both of them. And it's quite funny because since then I've had conversations with other animals where I've been asked to talk to two animals in the family. And by the time I get to the second animal, they already know what I've spoken about with the first animal. And they would let me
Wow.
know in the conversation. So I wasn't aware that they were eavesdropping and listening to what was going on, but they do. So that's very interesting as well. So it's just been a lot of practice with my own animals, with friends' animals, and then just starting out having little conversations for people and then developing it into a business, which is
That's
what I'm now
amazing.
doing. Mm.
So I'm a little curious. I know I've read one of your books, and I'm almost done with the second one. You've talked about dogs and cats mostly, and then you dabble into zoos. I wonder what kind of animals have you communicated with, and what's the most uncommon one that people would think of?
Okay, great question. So I talk to all animals. It doesn't matter what species they are, living or spirit. So very commonly it's cats and dogs and horses. I've spoken to birds, I've spoken to a cow, I've spoken to a few snakes. I think snakes are really interesting because they don't actually have ears, but
Yes.
they can hear me when I'm talking telepathically to them. And some of them have great senses of humor. A lot of animals do. But I was talking with one snake and he said, I'm all ears. And I thought, ha, ha, ha. He said that deliberately because he knew it was really funny. And then another part of the conversation, he said, oh, I'm doing a happy dance. And the next thing he's showing me this image of him gyrating around doing this dance. And so that's part of how they communicate as well. It's not just verbal. They can send images, they can send little video snippets, and they can send emotions and feelings. So they've got all these different ways that they can communicate telepathically to tell you what they're trying to tell you. So they're funny, but I do love going to zoos because I think a lot of animals at zoos don't have people telepathically communicating with them. And
Mhm.
it's for me, it's just lovely to find out, are they okay? Is there something that they would like changed to be more comfortable? So I know one of the zoos I went to, one of the animals was cold, and it's easy enough for the keeper to change the thermostat in the
Yeah.
enclosure to make them more comfortable. A cheetah I spoke to had some aches and pains, so the keepers were going to do something to help them with that. So wherever I've been, the keepers have been quite receptive to hearing what the animals have to say and, wanting to help support their well-being. So all sorts of different animals, crocodiles, lions. For some reason, I've got a great affinity with cats, either large or small, and
Mm.
bears. So if I go to any zoo anywhere, I've got to run around and see all the cats and all the bears. And so I talk to them first, but lots of different animals. And they just love it. Like I spoke to a koala at one of our local zoos, and he just had his head turned away from me for the whole conversation. And at the end of the conversation, I said, "Oh, would you mind turning your head around to the side so I can actually take a photo of your face?" And his head just slowly turned around to look at me, and he gave me a wink. So he
Oh,
knew exactly who was talking to him. And, they
wow.
understand what we're saying. I went to a zoo in England, and it was a surprisingly hot day for England. And there were lots of school kids there on excursions, and they were all trying to get the lions to sit up and look at them. But because it was such a
Mm.
hot day, they're all lying down, sleeping in the shade, and the kids are roaring at them, yelling at them to
Yeah.
wake up. And the lions are just ignoring them. Anyway, once the kids had left, I spoke to the male lion and just introduced myself. And I said, "Look, we've come all the way from Australia and I'd really like to see you. Would you mind sitting up for a few seconds just so I can take your photo?" The next
Mhm.
thing, he's sitting up looking straight at me. And the lady standing next to me said, "He's looking right at you." And I said, "Yes, I know. I asked him to." And she just looked at me as though I was crazy. But he just posed for some beautiful photos. And then once he'd had enough, whoop, back down again, back to sleep. But, they're happy to accommodate requests when they can. And it's just
Mm.
lovely to be able to, connect in with them like that. And when I wrote my first book, some of the stories in there are conversations I've had with wild animals. And
Yes.
it doesn't matter whether it's an animal in a zoo or it's a domestic animal or a wild animal, all of them can talk telepathically. So in my book, I wanted to connect with wild animals as representatives of their species, just so I could talk about what was happening in the wild in their words and tell their stories. And that was just really interesting hearing all these different animals come forward when I asked them as a collective, could someone
Yeah.
please answer my questions? And they were happy to do that. So I've had some fascinating conversations with animals in spirit and also living ones. So,
Yeah.
every conversation you get to find out more about their personalities because they really shine through. They all talk in different voices, just like humans do. So
That's
different
amazing.
tones. And, some of them, I spoke with a dog yesterday and she was just, no, today, she's very gentle, very polite. Like some of them have really cultured voices. Some of them have got real drawls.
Mm.
And it's just, you don't know what they're going to sound like until you start having the conversation with them. But they're just so excited to have a conversation and answer their parents' questions, but also pass on their personal messages for their parents as well. And
Yeah.
you've probably read this far in the second book about some of the mediumship conversations I've had
Yeah.
where the animals in spirit have used their code words
Yes.
to let me know that I'm really, well, it lets their parents know that I'm really talking to them. So one of the dogs in spirit I spoke to, he said tree house partway through the
Mm.
conversation. And I thought, why is a dog telling me tree house? I couldn't imagine a dog climbing up
Yeah.
the stairs to get into a tree house. So, but because I've learnt that they can put in this word that means nothing to do with what we're talking about,
Yeah.
I now know it means something significant for the parents. So I couldn't wait to ask his mum what tree house was. And she said that it's a property that she's been to a lot with him, so he knows the name. But across the road from the property is a whole series of nature walks. And he's gone on walks with mum in there from when he was a puppy till just before he passed
Oh,
away. And it was one of his favourite places to visit. So it was very significant that he used that word to let mum know that I was definitely connected to him. And then he was able to tell me that he'd had two previous lifetimes with his mum. Now,
yeah.
mum's very intuitive, and she had thought that he had the soul of her previous dog, but didn't realise that the second dog was actually a reincarnation of her first ever dog as a young child. And some of the listeners may actually have their childhood pet back with them now if they've reincarnated. And
Mm,
sometimes people think, oh, there's something really familiar about this dog. Why do I feel as though I know them? And it's
yeah.
because they have had a lifetime with you, but because people aren't aware yet that reincarnation can happen, they don't recognize who they are. So I've actually had to have some conversations with animals who are being very vocal, and their
Mm,
humans want to know why they're being so vocal, and they're trying to tell them who they are, whose soul is in the body, because they just want their parents to know. And once they know, then they can relax. They don't have to keep making all that noise because
yeah.
they understand who they are. So that gives the animal some peace as well. But it's just surprising for the humans to find out whose souls are actually in their animals. And
Yeah.
this sounds all very out there and weird, but it's just something that I'm used to now that it can be a human soul that reincarnates in an animal,
Yeah.
or it can be an animal's soul. And I just love unraveling the mystery of finding out what the
Yeah.
connection is because people can feel it. And they describe their animal and they say, this is my heart dog or my soul horse. And so they understand subconsciously with the language they're using that they do have this strong soul connection with their animal, but consciously they're not aware of who it is or why they feel the
Right.
way they do. But once we have that conversation and we can find out who they are, then it all makes sense. And I've got people where it's their grandma or their parent who's passed away that's come back in an animal. One of my clients, her father had actually told her, I want to come back as one of your dogs. And he did. And she could recognize her father in the dog. So it's just being really perceptive, really observing your animals and picking up what is familiar about them. And the same when they reincarnate. I wasn't aware this happened until one of my cats taught me about it. And I realise now, although it was such a shock at the time because she wasn't very old and she didn't have any health issues, she
Yeah.
did it deliberately so that she could come back and let me experience it personally, because then I now know what it feels like to know that they're coming back. Because when she passed away, it was such a shock. And so I said to her, what did you do that for? And she said, oh, I needed a new body, in a tone like that, like, doesn't everybody else do that? And then she said, stop being so sentimental. I'm coming back. And because she'd been so accurate with everything she'd taught me, I had to believe her. And
Yeah.
everyone thought it was a really weird grief coping technique to imagine that your animal was coming back again. But she told me what she was going to look like, and she
Yeah.
came back. And so now I've been able to write about it, and I've been able to ask in a mediumship conversation if it's the animal's destiny to come back. And if it is, then they can tell me. And they can tell me what species, what breed, what gender, what colour, often a time frame. I've had one cat in the UK who told me the specific rescue agency where his mum was going to find him. So to me, it's just really intriguing that they negotiate to swap into a body, and the soul who's in that body agrees to swap out so that that soul can come back and be reunited with their family again. And sometimes it happens very quickly after they pass away. Sometimes you might have to wait a number of years before the opportunity's there for them to come back again. But it's just such an incredible experience and really changes the grief process because
For sure.
you're mourning the animal you've had to say goodbye to, but now you're looking forward to welcoming them back again in a new body. And it's that sense of anticipation, like, what are you going to recognize? What are they going to
Yeah.
look like? What are you going to feel when you hold them for the first time? And they just walk back in the house. They know you, they know everyone else in the house, they know the other animals, they know where to go to sleep. They know where the food's served. And it's though they've just been away on a temporary holiday. and they've had a
Yeah.
full body makeover and they're back. It's just really interesting. In about 48 hours, everybody's accepting everybody. Everybody knows who everybody is. And yeah, life goes on.
Yeah. When I was reading that part of the book, I found that super fascinating that they could the tell you to tell the parents, like, I'm gonna come back in this body during this time. And I think that, you know, gives a sense of peace for the parents to be like, all right, they are coming back. I got to keep my eye out. Because some parents don't want, to get another pet because that pet has passed away. Um, I love that they just come back in different species, different genders, because it's just a soul. Like,
Yes. And interesting question that you asked before about is it the same species all the time? No, it's not. Usually it is. So if a dog passes away, normally they come back as a dog, but it might be a different breed or a crossbreed to what they were last time. And I've learned an awful lot about crossbreeds with dogs that I never knew before, and some
yeah,
breeds I've never heard of, color patterns I've never heard of. It's
yeah.
been very educational finding out. I had a cat who was coming back as a male cat, and often they do swap gender because that's the body that's available for them to come back, whether they want to be that or not. Uh, and she was going to come back as a male lilac Tonkinese cat. Now, I didn't know
Mhm.
when Tonkinese cats actually came in a lilac fur pattern, but yes, they do. And Mum found him, and they're really happy back together again. That's one of the stories in the book. And I get people, I tell them the information that the animal gives me, and like if they give a time frame, I just say, look, when you start looking, send me a photo, and then I can just ask the animal, is that the body they're going to reincarnate into? Sometimes their soul has already swapped in, ready for mum and dad to find them,
Mm,
and sometimes they wait till they're found before they swap in, just to make sure they do go home. And that's what I've said to parents as well, that sometimes something goes wrong, the animal might pass away, the breeder might decide not to sell them after all. There are various hiccups along the way. And so if the animal isn't able to come back to you in that first option, then they find another option to come back to you. I've had that with one of my cats coming back, and I've helped a number of clients when the first option doesn't come through. They will persist and they will come back in a different body as soon as they can
mm,
find one to come back in. If it's their destiny to come back, they do. And I feel now that some of these are souls that we must have agreed to have a really long lifetime
yeah.
contract with, that we just keep reincarnating with them in multiple lifetimes in different relationships. So whether they've been our human child or human partner in a past life, and they might have been an animal with us in a past life, and now they're an animal with us again. It's just incredible that we can keep reincarnating with them. And I've just had a recent conversation, and the mum actually knew there was some kind of soul connection, and she wanted to know whether her animal was aware of it as well, and
Yeah.
whether the animal was aware of that strong love connection between them. And it turns out they've had multiple human lifetimes together as well as the animal lifetimes. So, yes, the animal was very aware that they have kept being together in different lifetimes, and they can describe the lifetimes. So this one I spoke with today had had a lifetime with mum in 1516 and could tell me
Wow.
details about that. So sometimes they go back a long way. One of my cats had a lifetime with me in ancient Egypt, so probably over 2000 years ago. So some of these souls have been interweaving around each other for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And that's why you feel particular connections with some of them, because you have had those lifetimes together.
Yeah. And I loved, there was one story about, can't remember the exact name of the animal. I apologize. It's
Mhm.
a neighbor's cat that kept coming to the person's house.
Oh,
Do you
the
know what
soul
story I'm talking
swapping.
about?
Yes, the soul
Yes.
swapping. Yes. Now that's really intriguing as well, because that dog that I was just talking about that had the code word as treehouse, he actually swaps into his living sister to visit mum. And I didn't know that this could happen. Yes, the cat story, which I'll get to, taught me about that, but the same thing happens with the dogs. So he negotiates with his sister's soul to temporarily swap out, and he swaps in her body and goes and sits with his head on his mum's lap looking up at her, and he barks at her, and the girl dog doesn't bark. Mum
Yeah.
can actually see a physical change in the dog's face when his soul goes into her, and he'll stay for a while and interact with her and have cuddles, and then he'll swap back again and his sister's soul swaps back in. I had no idea that happened, but that's
Yeah.
what they've taught me, and I've had a few people who have experienced it now. But yes, the cat story was the first experience I had of that. So the cat had passed away that mum owned, and then the neighbour's cat would just start appearing and wanted to come in the back door. And mum didn't know whether to let her in or not because she wasn't her cat, but the cat
Right.
was so insistent. So mum finally let her in, and she went and slept in all the places that her cat slept in. And she was having visions of her cat as well, and had all sorts of strange experiences, but just knew that this was her cat's soul coming for a temporary visit in the neighbour's cat. And they just have lots of cuddles together. So it was really physically reassuring for mum to be able to hug
Mm.
the soul of her cat in this other body while she's waiting to come back again. The first body she was going to reincarnate in didn't work out. So she's taken her time, and mum's living somewhere now where she's not allowed to have animals. So the animal just has to wait till the situation is right for them to come back. But that really helped mum with her grief process, knowing she could have those temporary visits with her animal.
Yeah, that was a really fascinating story because I've heard of soul reincarnation, but soul swapping, I was like, wow,
Yeah, temporary
that's
soul
really
swapping.
fascinating.
It is. And I've just had another one recently, and I thought, yes, I know what that is now. Had a few conversations about that. It all makes sense. Mm.
Mm. So, I have another question for you.
Mhm.
So we talked about, the souls negotiating with the souls that are on Earth, and there's hiccups along the way. So when that hiccup happens, how does the parent know? I guess not every parent knows because they don't all come to you, but like, how does that message get across to the parent? Like, that's not my body because that didn't work. Here's another body that I'm going to into.
So with my clients, I follow through. So when they think they've found the body that they're going into, and I confirm that with the animal, when things change, like I've had parents contact me to say, the breeder's decided not to release them. What am I going to do? Then we can look at other options. I tune into the animal again, and they just reassure me, tell mum not to worry.
Mm,
I'm definitely coming back. Just let me find another body. That was one of the other stories I had in my recent book. You may not have got to yet about the cats. So mum had a cat for over 19 years who passed away, very beloved cat, very close to her, and a very special soul connection. So I feel I've had past lives before. Anyway, mum adopted a rescue cat from her local shelter, and he was being very vocal, and mum wanted to know why. So I had a conversation, and of course we worked it out. It's the soul of the former cat who swapped into the shelter cat's
mm,
body so that he could come back to mum again. So that was such a relief when mum knew, and he could relax then and stop being so vocal. But tragically, he died unexpectedly only a few months after getting back to
oh,
mum, which was such a shock because that was the first reincarnated animal that I'd connected with that's passed away. So it was a shock for mum, it was a shock for me, but it was also a shock for him. When I spoke to him, he said, "Oh, that
yeah.
wasn't supposed to happen." He was expecting to stay a lot longer. And he said, "Just leave it with me for a couple of days. I want to get back to mum as soon as possible." Anyway, when I spoke to him again, he'd negotiated another body to swap back into. He's now back as a girl. So mum's had him twice as a boy. Now he's a girl. But interestingly, they've all had the same eyes, like a
Oh,
connecting tray. I call them yellow topaz eyes. They're really striking eyes. And this new female kitten had very similar poses to the previous boy. So mum can see the definite connections between them. So that's a soul that's had 3 successive lifetimes with mum in different bodies.
Wow.
Now, that's cats coming back as cats. I've spoken with a cat who was determined to come back as a dog. So
Wow.
she's let me understand that they must have some choice about the body that they come back in, because she really wanted to be a dog. She didn't want to get left at home when the family went off on holiday. I think she had fear of missing
Oh,
out. She wanted to be with the family
that's
and, go
amazing.
to dog-friendly cafes and go on walks with mum. And so she told me she was coming back as a terrier. And partway through the conversation, she said to me, tomatoes. And I'm thinking, why is a cat telling me tomatoes? And
Yes.
so I said to her, can you elaborate on that, please? And she said, no, it's a test. And I thought, okay. And
Mm.
I thought, I wonder whether she wants to eat tomatoes when she comes back as a dog. So I had to Google, are tomatoes safe for dogs to eat? And apparently, yes, they are, as long as it's a very small amount of ripe red flesh with no stems or leaves. On this page, on the website, is a picture of a terrier with a
Oh,
bowl of tomatoes. And this is literally a couple of minutes after she's told me that she wants to come back as a terrier. And I thought,
yes.
wow, there's a huge confirmation sign from the universe that she is coming back as a terrier. So I told her mum that, and I sent her the link to the page so she could see the terrier with the bowl of tomatoes. And she said, oh, Annie, tomatoes are my favourite thing and I eat them every day. My cat knows that. That's my cat confirming for me that you're talking to her. So it was
Wow.
double confirmation with the tomatoes message for mum and the terrier message with the bowl of tomatoes is what she's come back as. And she's as happy as anything. She's gone on holidays. She goes everywhere. Everyone loves her. The one thing she can't do in a dog body is to leap up on her parents' bed to kiss them goodnight and go to sleep. So they've got her a little set of stairs so she can climb up herself. But she's played with her old cat toys. She's played
Yeah.
with the new dog toys they got her. It's just different having an animal back in a completely different
Yes.
species. I've spoken with someone else whose dog came back in a cow body, and I
Oh,
think this
yeah.
cow thinks it's a dog, and it runs up to see dad and wants to sit on the couch with dad, even though it's a big cow. It's quite funny, but very similar behaviours to the dog. So they don't have to come back as the same species, but often they do. But they seem to know what they're coming back as if they're coming back, and that's the information they can tell me. And they've found a body somewhere they want to swap into. I spoke with someone who wanted their dog to come back as the same breed that they'd been before. They were very particular about that. The dog actually reincarnated in a rescue cat body, absolutely beautiful looking cat. And mum thought, yes, nice cat, but I want a dog. So I had to tell the soul in the cat, sorry, mum wants you back as a dog, please. And then the soul found another dog, not the breed that mum wanted, but a breed that the soul really liked. No, mum didn't want that. She definitely wanted what she wanted. Soul, the dog, thought, yeah, mum's very particular about what she wants. And she's now found the right breed to come back to mum, and she's back with mum, and mum's really happy. So
Wow.
again, there's some flexibility that we can, if they haven't transitioned into a new body, we can actually ask. Because I had someone else who was trying to find the body that her dog was coming back into, and the first option didn't work. And mum ended up finding a body somewhere of a dog that was nearby her, and asked whether the soul could swap into that particular body. So they had to go and negotiate that. And yes, that's what happened. And so she's now back with her mum as well. So they're just still teaching me about all these different options for when they come back. But the key thing is, if they're meant to come back, they will, and you will find them. You'll be reunited with
Mm.
them and experience this just incredible euphoria and joy being able to hold your animal. Because I get so many parents asking me to ask their animals in a conversation, do they know how much I'd give just to hug them one more time?
Yeah.
And there you go, they come back and you've got a whole nother lifetime to hug them. It really is the most phenomenal thing that animals have taught me, and the most phenomenal thing that I've experienced.
So, a couple questions that have
Mhm.
come to my mind. Do animals come back, most of them come back in the same species because they're familiar with that species' body?
I don't think it's particularly that because some of them come back as a completely different breed to last time.
Okay.
So, they might have been a poodle last time and they come back as a Labrador or something like that. So sometimes they're the same breed. Sometimes they look almost identical to last time. Sometimes they're completely different. It's really variable. So I still don't understand yet all the different variations that go on. But just from the conversations I've had, yes, they can come back as a different species. And yes, they must have some choice in whose body they come back in. And that's all that they've taught me so far. But I'm sure there's a lot more for me to learn. I will be writing another book. So I'm writing my trilogy about bridging animal consciousness. So
Yeah.
you've read one and you're partway through book two. I haven't started book three yet because I don't know what I'm going to be writing about
Mm,
yet. But this is all part of my legacy, and my purpose is to share the information that animals have shared with me so I can help raise consciousness for other animal parents so they know more about their animals. So it's not taking them for granted, but
yeah,
it's understanding on a deeper level and more about the spiritual purpose of animals being with us as well, recognizing the past life connections, but recognizing they can help us on our spiritual journey.
that's amazing. And I really love that the animals remember their past lives. Like we don't remember our past lives, but they can tell us like we were, like you said, in ancient Egypt 2000 years ago.
Yep.
And then my follow-up question is if the soul of the pet can't come back, do they send another soul?
Brilliant question. So, a couple of things. Even if it's not an animal's destiny to come back and be a physical presence with us, any animal soul who passes over, once they've gone through a healing process on the other side, can come back and visit us energetically. And so I've had a number of people thinking they're going crazy because they've seen their animal running up and down the corridor. And like the animal doesn't have a physical body anymore, it doesn't exist. But somehow they can put a temporary body on so that we can recognize them and see them when they come back to visit, or we can hear them. So when my cat, who taught me about reincarnation, used to come back for visits, I'd hear her meowing very loudly. I've just had a lady tell me her cat, who passed away a couple of days ago, she's been hearing her cats bell in different parts of the house. They can also help us to feel them so we can be physically aware of their presence. So I had one mum whose dog in spirit came to visit and he jumped on her bed and he jumped on
Yes, I
her bed
read
with
that
such
story.
force. Yeah, he knocked the pillows off. That was hilarious. So mum definitely knew that he was there. But I've had people feeling them pat their faces or snuggling into the body. One of my boy cats comes back and he plays with the hair on the back of my head because he used to sleep on my pillow and massage my head through the night.
Mm,
So I feel him when he comes and does that. So they do lots of different things to help reassure us. And if you've got living animals, they will be aware that their fur brother or sister or whatever the relationship is visiting because they're really sensitive to frequencies
right.
and presences in the house. So if your animal is suddenly staring intently at the wall, you can't see a thing, it means that they're picking up that someone's there. So, it's good for our animals in spirit to come back and spend time with their animal family members as well as the human family members. And it's lovely for us to know that they've transitioned safely and that they can come back and visit, or they can visit in dreams and meditations, and we can invite them to do that. But getting back to your question, yes, if it's not their destiny to return in a physical body, then yes, they can help orchestrate for another animal to come into our lives. They know that we're not replacing them, we're not being disrespectful by getting another animal. They know how healing it will be for us to be able to love another animal. It will help with our heart healing. And they know how fortunate it will be for that new animal to have us as parents and be part of the family and get the love and security that they experienced. So, yes, that's a question I get asked. Did you, bring this animal to
Mm.
me? And there's weird coincidences that aren't really coincidences where people find animals called by the same name as the one
Oh,
who's
yeah.
passed away. There's lots of stories like that. So it's just being open to the fact that your animal is grieving on the other side. They won't want to have left you, but they will be doing what they can to help you heal.
Hmm. That's really reassuring. I mean, I don't have any pets, but I feel like a lot of listeners do have pets or are looking for pets. And that's just, like we think about our loved ones. It's the same thing with our pets. I mean, they're a soul, they're not just a pet. And
Yep.
sometimes when people are like, "Oh, it's just a pet," it's not just a pet. It's a
It's a
soul.
soul who's incarnated in an animal body, and
Yes.
we're souls that have incarnated in human bodies. We may
Yes.
have had animal lifetimes in the past. We may have had human lifetimes in the past. And yes, it's fascinating that animals can remember theirs and we can't. And I think that's because it's an aspect of the soul who comes back as the
Hmm.
reincarnation. There's an aspect of the soul who stays on the other side and they communicate with each other. And I think that's how they know what's going on. And there might be multiple fragments of the soul having lifetimes at the same time, which is getting very complicated, but this is in the book as well. And they all talk to each other. And I'm
Mm.
sure that's how they know what's going on with these different lifetimes and they know such detail. Like I get told, they were a child living in the 1700s and their name was Alice and they had 5 siblings. Like that's the kind of detail they go
Yeah.
into with a conversation. So they're well aware of what happened in that lifetime. I had an animal telling me the other day, a dog, that they were a human son of their mum and they passed away aged 2 with galloping consumption, which is what they
Mm.
used to call tuberculosis. And the dog soul was very aware that that's what happened to the little human boy. So really interesting that they know
Wow.
this. Mm.
That's really fascinating. So I want to wrap up with talking about your books. I
Hmm.
have two of them. I have to say when I was
I have
reading
2 of
this
them as well.
I have to say when I was reading this one, I could feel your cats on the side of because I was reading in bed. I felt them on the bed. Like, yeah,
Oh,
you're
I'm
reading the
going
book.
buzzy. Oh, yeah, no, they were there. Isn't that interesting? Energetically, they're with you. I'm just buzzy all
Yeah.
over. So that's my
Woo!
confirmation.
So like I was
And
reading
I've
in the
had
corner of my
people,
eye. Oh, sorry.
yeah, I've had people be able to hear animals talking after they've read that book, like it's helped to activate their telepathic channel. So don't be surprised if you suddenly hear animals talking when you're walking along the street or
Okay.
something. I had a lady who read the book and she was driving along and suddenly she tuned into the conversation 2 dogs were having on the footpath near her. So, yeah, sorry, but I interrupted you with the story of having them on the bed with you.
Oh, that's okay. So I was reading on the bed in the corner of my eye. I could feel the energy towards, the right side of my bed. And I was like, let's tune into this for a second. And I could like energetically see the three of them just on the bed, like, yeah, you're reading the book.
Oh, that's
Oh,
amazing. Thank you for sharing that story.
oh, you're welcome.
They'll be
So
excited that you're doing this interview because they know how important it is to get messages
it's
out
very
to animal
important.
parents, which is why they've contributed to the books as well.
Yeah, I could definitely feel the different animals, like personalities while you were writing the books, as I was reading the books. And I love how you put the images so we can get an image of what the pets looked like. Not that it was like necessary, but it just kind of adds to the reading.
I think people really connect with the image of the animal and seeing the before similarities and the differences. I was really excited with writing that third book that I was able to put the images in. I couldn't do that with the first couple of books, but I think that really adds to it.
Yeah.
And they are real personalities, they're real
Hmm.
souls and, they've got stories to tell. And it's just so wonderful that all their parents gave me permission to share their images and to share their stories because they're aware of how much having conversations have helped them on their journeys. And they were happy to share their stories to help other animal parents, so they know that, you're going through this heartbreak, but there can be happiness at the end, and it gives
Yeah.
them hope. Mm.
Hope, is a really, really big thing, especially now where we're at it 2024. And I'd like to wrap this up with where can people find you? Social media, your website, where can they buy your books and any offerings that you have?
Okay, lots of different questions. So my website is www.cosmicheartintuitive.com.au for Australia. The easiest way to contact me is email. So if you email me at chintuitive@bigpond.com. My 3 books. So I've got a book for people on their spiritual awakening and spiritual development journey called Evolving Hearts and Souls, The Guide to Spiritual Awakening. And then I've got my 2 books as the first part of the trilogy for Bridging Animal Consciousness. So for anyone in Australia, you can purchase the books directly from me, and you can email me to arrange that. Anywhere else in the world, the books are available through Amazon. I will be offering a special to your listeners. So if they email me and put soul as the email subject, SOUL, so I know they've been listening to our podcast, I will have several offers for them. So if they purchase one of the animal communication packages, I will send them a free book of their choice out of the 3 books that I've got, and I'll pay for postage for them. Or if they
Wow.
sign up for my mentorship program, they do get my first book as part of the program, but I will send another one of my books to them of their choice. Or they can purchase one of my books from me with a personal message from one of their animals, living or in
Wow.
spirit. So I would need a photo of their animal and their name so I can connect with them and get their permission
Mm-hmm.
to get a dedication. And then I write the dedication in the book and post it to you. But that would be at a cost for doing the reading and
Yeah.
sending the international postage. But it's very special getting a
Yeah.
message from your animal and having that in the book. So I'm happy to do that. So if people just email me
Okay.
at chintuitive@bigpond.com, put soul, SOUL, and just ask about the offers, and then I can send them that information. On my website, I've got 4 free downloadable guides for animal parents. So everyone's welcome to go to my website. I've got a guide about coping with animal bereavement. I've got one about animal communication. I've got one about rescue animals, because we need to be very patient and sensitive with what's happened in their past, and one about welcoming a new animal to your house and existing animals with less stress and more harmony. So you're
Mm.
welcome to do that. I also am on social media on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram as Annie Bourke, Bourke, so people can connect with me. Every month, I offer a free masterclass online for animal parents with all sorts of topics so that people can understand their animals on a deeper level. So they're welcome to sign up for them when they see the ads. And I do have an email newsletter that they can subscribe to and get information about events as well. So I have a YouTube channel, and I have a podcast called What Animals Tell Me. So there's lots of different
Mm.
ways for people to connect with me and find out more about what's happening with their animal. And then I have
That's
the
amazing.
conversations. So whether it's an animal who's living or in spirit, I just connect through photos and have the conversation and answer questions. I also do intuitive readings, which is different to animal communication. But if people give me a series of statements which have a yes no answer, then I will get a response in my body and I can answer their questions. So that's available as well.
Wow, you offer so much. I love that. And I love that
I,
you're
I
really
just want to
fulfilling your
help.
purpose. Yeah.
There's lots of animals to help, and just having one conversation with an animal changes the relationship with their parent. They're so grateful the parent has cared enough to have a conversation and find out what's going on in their world. And they're more attentive, more affectionate. It just really changes everything having that conversation. But the most important thing for anyone who's listening to this is to talk verbally to your animals every day, because they
Mm.
understand you. They just love hearing you talking to them, telling them that you love them, and what's going on in your world. It really does make a difference. And I've had people listening to my presentations and they've gone and told their animal that they love them and they're grateful that they're there. And they've seen a change just with that one conversation. It really is that powerful and empowering for our animals. They know we love them, but hearing us actually saying it, knowing that they understand, really makes a difference for them.
And I love you is such a high vibrational energy. Just when you say it. I mean, like I said, I don't have any pets, but my brother has two dogs, and I say it every time I see them, and it just their eyes just light up and their ears go up.
And they know. And it's interesting because, saying that we love them and we're grateful that they're with us, they're very high vibrational words, as you just said, and they're very sensitive to vibration. So they
Yeah,
understand what those words mean. So, yes, they love
perfect.
doing that.
So we have one last question. We didn't talk about it, but I'm just curious myself. So for people that don't have pets, can they still gain information from you, from your offerings?
Yes, certainly. If they're interested, and they're welcome to come along to the master classes. The next one I'll be doing the 16th of August, America, Canada time, 17th of August, Australian Eastern time. And I'm talking about what should I ask my animal, because
Ah,
people just don't know what kind of questions to ask or what kind of information they want to get. And there's so much, as we've talked about in our session today, about
yeah.
past lives, about soul connections, about reincarnation, about our purpose, our mission, why our animals with us, all of those kind of things that a lot of people won't even have thought about or known that they could ask. And it just makes that conversation so much richer, and they get so much more information out of it, rather than just saying, do you like your food? Do you like your bed? Like they're yes, no questions, and they're not as productive as asking an open-ended question. And they can keep talking to us. And like, some of our animals are here to be our teachers. And even when
Yeah.
they pass over, they can still keep teaching us from the other side, which is what I'm doing with my animals in spirit. So it's no different to having them here. They can still share the wisdom with you that you need to know. So a good question is, what do you want me to know? And then it's
Mm,
open slather that they can tell you. And often they're really perceptive about what's happening with you. Are you too stressed? Are you too fatigued? Are you giving too much to other people and not looking after yourself? Is there some negative presence in the house that's affecting them and affecting you? There's all sorts of things that they can tell you in that conversation. And yes, I've spoken to people that haven't had animals, but there's options. They can go and volunteer at an animal shelter or visit zoos or something, and see, have an interaction with an animal, because they don't understand what it feels like to have an animal as a pet,
yeah.
and to develop that relationship with them. But it's just amazing. I just love being in their energy. So I just love going to
Mhm.
zoos and just sitting there and embracing their energy and interacting with them. It's kind of rejuvenating for me to do that. It won't be the same for everyone, but
Yeah.
there's so much that we can get as a benefit from being around an animal.
Oh my gosh, Annie, thank you so, so much. I loved every minute of this conversation. I loved your books. I'm totally going to attend that master class because I'm curious myself. I always like to learn new things. I think that's a beautiful thing, and especially in the spiritual community, that you always are learning. As you know, with your cats, you're always learning something new, and with other conversations that you're having. Thank you so, so much for spreading the word about animal communication and animal consciousness. I think that's amazing what you're doing.
Well, thank you so much for giving me a platform to answer your questions and unravel some of the wisdom that I've learnt from the animals. I just feel as they're telling me all this information, so it's my duty to share that information with the world and help people have much more meaningful, richer relationships with their animal.
Thank you so much, friends. We will see you next Monday.